This is reflecting after the webinar we had, and I want to kind of capture a few points. Number one, I appreciated the fact that we got together and share some ideas. From 20, 30 years ago, we haven't seen each other, but now came back together and had this experience. So that was really great. And for me, just reflecting, this was the great opportunity to revisit the materials which I've used over and over 3 decades perhaps, and added and subtracted few. And then we went through the webinar, and even after that, I did go through the PowerPoint and then modified more. So there are now part one, part two, part three, fairly lengthy videos that I posted on the YouTube. And what I feel now is that, at the age 72, reflecting all of that, the one idea that pops up is that I mentioned in my new shop floor management book, the transformation is starting from the mind and then change the attitude, change the behavior and habit, and then change the destiny. That was the book 1992, I believe it was published. And along with that kind of a procedure or process of our changes, therefore, we have to go eliminate the bad habit and create a new habit to meet the needs that we have in front of us, and then exercise it. So it is the wisdom, experiential wisdom that we have to develop, not just the concept ideas, but execution is critical. And that was the part three. I spent so much time and 55 minutes or something, so I'm not sure how many people can go through it. But for me, it was a great opportunity to revisit whole and to make sense out of it. And what's interesting is that as we went through this over the last couple of months, I went through the same kind of process of finding the destiny, because I was applying for visa in New Zealand, and there are lots of roadblocks and difficulties. And the mail was delayed because of COVID, and sometimes the computer have a glitch. And most recently, there was the medical information that didn't upload quite to the immigration office, so that they sent me a mail. But what happened is that it was not my fault, although they're saying that I need to go through the retest. But the point was that the X-ray, chest X-ray, had my birthday date, but it was wrong. So it's the typical shop floor issues that pops up, and that's just one of them. And there are other issues like sending the mail to FBI or Japan police for certificate, and there was a delay, or many, many more. Even now, I haven't finalized this whole thing. So what it tells me is that I'm going through all of this as if I was at the shop floor. The people at the shop floor going through difficulties. And there are lots of roadblocks, there are lots of bureaucracy, the procedures, the papers, and the information through the mails and so forth. And these days, it is becoming more and more so, I feel like. In my case, I live in the States or New Zealand or in Japan, and there are different systems. I have the Macintosh or the iPhone, but the other places I use the Android. And all that the system differences and so forth make it so cumbersome. And the filing management certainly requires the good workplace organization, so that everything gets put together and it's done smoothly. So I can sympathize a lot about the shop floor issue. And the shop floor is not that the shop floor in the sense of the production or the service, but also in the middle management and also the top management, because everything is changing. So under such a condition, and to go through this material about finding the destiny, to be the master of destiny, is clearly fit to the setting of where we are now. So Whatever the case is that we end up in doing it, and we may have to revisit this and go deeper or to make sure that we are getting the point across and practice it in whatever we do, at whatever the situation in the company, organization, or in life. And you can call the mini company in the company, but also you can call the mini company as a family or the hobby or a mini company of your own health or finance, And then you have that glass wall. The idea of the glass wall is making things visible if it's important and easy to access instead of scattered here and there. So all the filings and stuff like that I talked about has to be organized. And if we don't get organized, things go wrong and takes more time, make more mistake, and then you have to revisit those, and you go into the chaos, and you go crazy. Of course, you may want to kind of get out of the system and live in a very calm and quiet place. But many people, that's not the case. Even for me, I have to go through the internet, and the speed is slow, as we experienced it, and the mail and the system and all that creates difficulty, or even the printing of the material. So what's the bottom line of my talking about it? The bottom line is that we have to go through the difficulties, the chaos, and there's a way to do it. And as much as we can practice the ideas from the lean and workplace organization, housekeeping to inventory reduction, waste elimination, all of that, and also the managerial process of the mini company glasswall management, we really need to practice not at work, but in our life. Everything is changing. So that's the realization, and I'm hoping that you get the sense of what I have gone through, and hopefully get the benefit personally and also for our organization, so that you can create this users group, whatever the form, or within your company too, to share ideas and so forth. Maybe I'm thinking too much, and it may not be pragmatic, because some people are quite opposed to these ideas and rather be just to do whatever they want. But if you are the leader and also part of the society or organization, we want to have some common language and common concept. And whatever the term you use, doesn't matter whether mini company, glass wall, or whatever, it doesn't matter. Or I use the word brain and heart. I see the same thing happening. And even just in the last few days, I met people who are talking about the heart and behaving from that point of view. And I was very encouraged. This was in the Maori people. And I also noticed that in America, there's some similar movement. So every tribe or the group of people may go through some sort of a changing of the perspective and the way to find the future and how to motivate themselves, have ownership, and find a way moving forward. And it's going on everywhere. So whether you call it the mini company or glass wall management, it doesn't matter. Or finding the destiny that I talk about, that end up in coming to each individual's finding the destiny, how to deal with the situation with clarity. So if we can practice those ideas in the organization, in the company, whatever the setting, or the mini company, even the top management are doing that, you can do it as a mini company to practice the same idea. So that's the kind of perspective or way I look at it. Given the situation, we can find the destiny, and that's all of our job, to live better and find the meaning in what we do. So let me just give you one last quick point quickly. I mentioned that I like the Zen or even artificial intelligence. I even think about the human biology is very important, because we have to know how the physiology, how things happen. Like there's a Stanford professor called Sapolsky. All interesting thing, he talks about the free will, if there is such a thing. Or I talked about the Charlie Munger in relation to the investment, about his view of the, how to invest, but also relating to the society and finding his destiny. He says he wants to be independent, and that means the liberation and the freedom that he wants to gain. And for that, he says lots of things, and I share some of those ideas in other videos. So things we talked about are connected to many other fields, and more we enrich and mesh those things together and be able to see things from different angles and put ideas together, we can gain more confidence in what this is and how to apply it. So everybody's skills and interests may be different, so there's a difficulty, but for that reason too, we want to have a common language, the way of doing things together for everyone to be connected to each other. So basically, the last point that I was trying to say was about this. This one, someone just loaned me a book on the Stoic about Seneca talking something about the tranquility. And related to that, what's interesting about the tranquility, or in my time I mentioned in the webinar or in my YouTube, I use the word of calm and quiet mind. And I think that's a very basic place that we want to be, whether we are under pressure, chaos, difficulty, but also sometimes we have nothing to do or very complacent. What I think this tranquility or calm and quiet mind is telling is, let me just read this Seneca's point. He is saying that believing in yourself and trusting that you are on the right path and not being in doubt by following the myriad footpaths of those wandering in every direction. That's the kind of state of mind. That's the state of mind that produces tranquility. So the way I can connect what this means is that I use the word calm and quiet mind, which basically is like in Zen term, no mind. It sounds very illogical, but we have lots of programs going on in our mind, sometimes I call monkey mind. And we are busy, and my question is, so what? What's the point? In practice of the mini company, and also this glass wall, is the idea of the glass wall is to make things visible so that you can see what's going on. The mission, the customer, suppliers, the KPIs, the project, what's red and green, where things are related and not. So there are various ideas from different angles to put together to make the mini company to function. And this mini company that to function is also to be done in each individual. And if you look at the internal to our mind or brain, I want to have a glass wall in our mind. And what does that mean? Instead of a monkey mind, the logic's jumping all over the place, I want to have a quiet space to look at what's the mission and customers, KPIs, project, whatever that is. As if you go to a mini company and trying to understand what's going on. And when you are in that space, that there may be information posted so that you can look around, what you do is not thinking much. Just observe and some of the highlighting point of what's available in front of you. That's the glass wall. And then you start to ask the question of, or without asking the question, you start to play with the idea of how things are meshed together and what's the message coming out of it. And that's the insight, that's the strategy, that's how to figure out what the bottleneck is, what's needed. And there's a meaning to find that, because that what's needed to be discovered is connected to part of the project and the KPIs and customers and achieving the mission. Because that's the whole point of our exercise of the mini company and glass wall management. And if we lose that, we cannot have a good mind to lead our activity. So this space is very important to have, not just at the shop floor or in the office of the glass wall. People have those files in the computer or in the filing cabinet, and those information are scattered and not synthesized. Very difficult. And if you try to synthesize, it takes time. And that's the critical point of how you run your mini company. If you don't have it, you don't know which way to go. What's more important than others? Why? How can you prove that? Those are the questions that you want to get in a few minutes, if I may say so. So that's the kind of a setting that I think that we want to get at. And if we agree on that point, among other things that I mentioned here, I think that will give us a sense of the direction and approaches. And when we are at that tranquility, or being in a state of calm and quiet mind, what's happening there, in my imagination, is that we are at the cutting edge of figuring out what to do, given the situation. And that's happening from moment to moment, but the glass ball setting would give us the moment of looking at the mini company and what to do. Reflection, or going through the PDCA, checking what happened and what's going on and why and what can be done different. And you go through the scenario, not jumping all over. Well, it can be jumping all over, but trying to go through with the logic and come up with the answer. It's kind of like a soccer team trying to figure out the strategy when the people are moving and the ball is rolling into some direction. When you're experienced, then you can see things better with all the players here and there and what could be the strategy. That's dynamic. And that is the same kind of setting with a glass wall we can have. If we are determined to do it, we can do it as a company or mini company, but also as an individual. That's why I talked about in the webinar too, first about organization and then talk about the individual, because they are related to each other. And we need to be able to find the connection, motivation, empowerment, and the skills along with it to address whatever the bottleneck is. So I mentioned about the no mind. No mind is the open mind to figure out what may come, just like a children, curious. What's out there? How do you play with that and come up with the idea? So that seems to be the source of our creativity. And the source of creativity is about the living. And there's the energy and the fun and playfulness as kids may have that. And I think we can do that. At least that is my view. And that's the orientation of this Finding the Destiny seminar, or the webinar, and for us to figure out the passage into the future. Well, if you think, or people think it's important, we can together share experience and figure the way out. Whatever format, users group or webinar, or the many videos I start to post, and I may have 150 or more videos looking at the situation from different angles. I'm not suggesting that you need to look at all of those or any of those, but just an idea. And I'm hoping that that resolution, if I may call it, of finishing the webinar and resting a little bit, and then for us to move forward. This is just a little bit of an output from my point of view. If you can listen and maybe give me a feedback. Thank you.